They told you it doesn't exist. They told you it's just a testing ground. They told you it's nothing but desert. But then explain this. A place so secret that even government agencies weren't allowed to talk about it. A place erased from maps for decades. A place where flights are forbidden, cameras are restricted, and people who get too close are met not with warnings, but with weapons. And yet, millions are convinced that what's hidden there could change everything we know about reality. Before we go any further, hit subscribe, drop a like, and comment where you're watching from. Because what you're about to hear isn't just another conspiracy. It's a puzzle that's been building for over half a century. And once you see all the pieces, you might not look at the sky the same way again. Area 51. Officially, it didn't even exist until 2013. Think about that. For nearly 60 years, one of the most guarded places on Earth was treated like a myth. But behind that silence, something very real was happening. The base is located deep in the Nevada desert, inside the massive Nellis Air Force Range, a military zone so large it covers around 18,000 square kilometers. That's bigger than entire regions in some countries. And most of it, completely off limits. No civilian flights, no public access, no explanations. From the outside, it looks empty. Just sand, heat waves, and distant mountains. But that's exactly what makes it perfect. Because if you wanted to hide something, where would you put it? Right in the middle of nowhere. The story begins in 1954, at the height of the Cold War. The United States needed a place to test something new. Something so advanced, so classified, that even allies couldn't know about it. They chose a dry lake bed called Groom Lake. Remote, isolated, invisible. Perfect. What started as a testing ground quickly became something else. Planes were flown in pieces and assembled on site just to keep their design secret. Engineers worked behind layers of clearance. Even pilots didn't always know what they were flying. And the aircraft themselves? They weren't normal. High-altitude reconnaissance planes like the U-2 were tested here. Machines designed to fly higher than any radar could detect. To the average person looking up from the ground, they didn't look like planes at all. They looked like something else. Something fast, silent, unnatural. And that's when the sightings began. Bright objects moving in impossible ways. Lights appearing and disappearing without a trace. Shapes that didn't match anything known. People started talking. Newspapers picked up the stories. And instead of shutting them down, the government let them spread. Think about that. What if the idea of UFOs wasn't something they tried to hide, but something they allowed? Because if people believe they're seeing aliens, they stop asking about secret aircraft. It was the perfect cover. And for years, that explanation held. Until someone came forward and claimed the truth was far more disturbing. Not just experimental planes, not just classified technology, but something not from this world. And when he spoke, everything changed. The official story is simple, too simple. According to the US government, Area 51 is nothing more than a testing facility, a place where advanced aircraft are developed, modified, and pushed to their limits. No aliens, no hidden civilizations, no impossible technology, just planes. And if you stop there, it all makes sense. During the Cold War, the United States was locked in a silent battle with the Soviet Union. Not just armies and weapons, but information. Whoever could see further, fly higher, and move faster would win. That's where Area 51 comes in. The first major project tested there was the U-2 spy plane. It was designed to fly at altitudes so extreme that enemy radar simply couldn't detect it. At over 70,000 feet, it was practically untouchable. From that height, it could photograph entire military installations deep inside Soviet territory. That alone made it one of the most important weapons of its time. But developing something like that required absolute secrecy. Workers were flown in on unmarked planes. The aircraft itself was transported in pieces to avoid recognition. Even inside the base, information was strictly compartmentalized. You only knew what you needed to know. Nothing more. Then came the next generation, the SR-71 Blackbird, a machine so advanced that even today, decades later, it still feels like it belongs to the future. It could fly at speeds over Mach 3, faster than a bullet, and at altitudes where the sky itself begins to darken. Its surface would heat up so much during flight that parts of it would expand mid-air. Think about that. A plane designed to change shape while flying. To anyone on the ground in the 1960s, seeing something like that would be almost impossible to explain. A black object streaking across the sky, faster than anything known, leaving no visible trail. Of course, people thought they were seeing UFOs, because what else could it be? And this is where the official narrative becomes interesting. Instead of correcting these assumptions, the government stayed silent. In some cases, they even encouraged the confusion. Reports of strange flying objects were quietly dismissed, filed away, or redirected into the growing culture of UFO speculation. Because every time someone said aliens, they moved further away from the truth, and the truth was classified. But here's the part that doesn't quite fit. If Area 51 was only about aircraft, why the extreme level of secrecy even decades later? Why restrict airspace so aggressively that even trained pilots are warned to stay far away? Why use unmarked security forces instead of standard military units? Why deny its existence for so long, and only admit it when the information was already impossible to hide? And most importantly, why does the story keep changing? Because as advanced as those aircraft were, they still obeyed the laws of physics. They didn't hover silently. They didn't make sharp-angled turns at impossible speeds. They didn't disappear mid-air. But witnesses claimed they saw exactly that, over and over again. And eventually, one man stepped forward and said, "You're all looking in the wrong place." Because according to him, the real secrets of Area 51 aren't above the ground. They're buried deep beneath it. If you try to get close to Area 51 today, you won't get a warning. You'll get watched. Long before you ever see a fence, long before you reach a gate, you're already on someone's radar. Hidden sensors track movement across the desert. Cameras sit on distant hills. And somewhere, unseen, someone is already deciding how close is too close. And if you cross that invisible line, there are no second chances. No marked patrol cars, no standard military checkpoints. Instead, white unmarked vehicles appear out of nowhere. Armed men step out. No insignia, no names, no explanation. Just one message: turn around. People who've been there call them camo dudes. No one officially knows who they are. Not Air Force, not police, not any publicly acknowledged unit. But they're heavily armed, highly trained, and they don't talk. Ask questions, they don't answer. Push further, they reach for their weapons. And that raises a serious question. If this is just a testing site, why guard it like this? Because even other military bases don't operate like this. At most installations, you see structure, ranks, uniforms, protocols. But here, it's different. It's quieter, more controlled. Almost like the goal isn't just to protect something, but to erase curiosity itself. The airspace above Area 51 is one of the most restricted in the world. Pilots are warned repeatedly to stay clear. Even drifting slightly off course can trigger immediate response. And this isn't just about safety, it's about visibility. Because from the ground, you see almost nothing. From the air, you'd see everything. Runways, hangars, movement, maybe more. But even satellites weren't always allowed to look. In 1974, something strange happened. Astronauts aboard Skylab accidentally photographed the area around Groom Lake. Not because they were investigating it, but because no one told them they weren't supposed to. That's how secret it was. The images were published before anyone could stop it, and suddenly there was proof that something was there. Not details, not answers, just confirmation. And even that caused tension between agencies. Think about that. A government facility so classified that even NASA wasn't fully informed. But here's where it gets even more unsettling. Despite all this secrecy, despite all these restrictions, people still see things. Lights that move too fast, objects that change direction instantly, shapes that don't match any known aircraft. And these sightings didn't stop in the 60s or 70s. They continue, even now. Some say it's just advanced technology, black projects years ahead of anything publicly known. And maybe that's true. But then explain this. Why do some of these objects behave in ways that don't just push the limits of physics, but seem to ignore them completely? No sound, no propulsion, no visible force, just movement. Controlled, precise, impossible. And the deeper you look into Area 51, the more it feels like the surface is just a distraction. Because according to one man, the real work isn't happening in the open desert, it's happening underground, far below anything you're allowed to see. The sightings didn't start as rumors. They started as reports. In the late 1950s, people living near the Nevada desert began noticing something strange in the sky. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Bright objects moving faster than anything they had ever seen. Lights changing direction mid-air. Silent shapes crossing the horizon in seconds. At first, it was dismissed. Weather balloons, experimental aircraft, optical illusions, but then the reports became consistent. Different people, different locations, same descriptions, a green glow, sudden acceleration, sharp, impossible turns. And here's the detail that matters most. These sightings were happening exactly when the most secret aircraft in US history were being tested. Coincidence? Maybe. But look closer. When the U-2 flights began, commercial pilots started reporting unknown objects flying far above their altitude. Objects they couldn't identify, couldn't reach, and couldn't explain. To them, it wasn't a plane. It was something else. The same thing happened again with later projects. Each time new technology was tested, new UFO sightings followed. The pattern was too precise to ignore, and the government knew it, because internally, they had the answers. They knew exactly what those objects were. But publicly, they said nothing. Or worse, they redirected the narrative. Instead of explaining the technology, they allowed the idea of extraterrestrials to grow. Movies, media, speculation, it all started gaining momentum at the exact same time. Think about the timing. As experimental aircraft became more advanced, UFO culture exploded. Because if people believe what they're seeing is alien, they stop asking about military technology. It was the perfect misdirection, a controlled myth. But here's where things stop being simple. Because not all sightings matched known aircraft. Some reports described objects that didn't resemble planes at all. No wings, no engines, no visible structure, just shapes, discs, triangles, spheres. And unlike experimental jets, these objects didn't just move fast. They behaved differently. They hovered without sound. They accelerated instantly, no buildup, no delay. They vanished. Not flew away. Vanished. Even trained observers, pilots, engineers, military personnel, reported seeing things they couldn't classify. And these weren't people prone to imagination. These were professionals, people trained to identify aircraft, and they couldn't explain what they saw. So the question changed. It was no longer, are these secret planes? It became, what if some of them aren't? Because if even a fraction of those sightings can't be explained by known technology, then something else is happening. something that doesn't fit into the official story. And that's exactly what made one man's claims so explosive. Because he didn't just talk about lights in the sky, he talked about machines, physical objects, hidden away, studied, taken apart, not built by humans. And according to him, they weren't just theories. He said he saw them with his own eyes. His name was Bob Lazar, and the moment he spoke, everything changed. In 1989, a man appeared on a local Las Vegas TV station with a story that sounded impossible. He claimed he had worked at a facility called S4, a site located near Area 51, hidden deeper within the restricted zone. Not above ground, below it. According to Lazar, this wasn't a standard military base. It was a research facility, a place where something far more advanced than aircraft was being studied. Something not made by humans. At first, people laughed. Another conspiracy, another story. But Lazar didn't speak like a conspiracy theorist. He spoke like an engineer, calm, precise, detailed, too detailed. He described entering the facility through a hidden access point carved into the side of a mountain. He talked about security briefings, biometric scanners, and heavily compartmentalized teams. No one knew everything, only fragments. And his fragment? Propulsion systems. Not engines, not fuel. Something else. He claimed that inside S4, there were multiple flying objects, not prototypes, not experimental aircraft, but fully intact machines, craft, small, metallic, smooth, unlike anything ever built by human hands. He said there were 9 of them. 9. And his job was to study how they worked, not to build them, not to design them, to understand them. According to Lazar, these craft didn't rely on conventional propulsion. No jet engines, no rockets, no visible thrust. Instead, they manipulated gravity. Think about that. Not fighting gravity, not resisting it, controlling it. He described a system powered by an unknown element, one that, at the time, didn't even exist on the periodic table. Element 115. A substance capable of generating a gravitational field so strong, it could bend space itself, not move through space, distort it. And if that sounds like science fiction, remember this. Years later, in 2003, scientists officially synthesized an element with atomic number 115, moscovium. Now, that doesn't prove Lazar was telling the truth. But it does raise a question. How did he know? And that wasn't the only thing. Lazar claimed that during his time at S4, he saw something else. Not just machines, but beings, small, humanoid. Not clearly visible, not directly interacting with him, but present, observed, studied. He said the staff even had a nickname for them. Kids, because of their size, because of their appearance. Let that sink in. If even a fraction of this is true, then Area 51 isn't just a testing site. It's something else entirely. A place where humanity isn't leading the research, but trying to catch up. Of course, the backlash was immediate. Authorities denied everything. Records of Lazar's education, missing, employment history, unconfirmed. His past was questioned, discredited, picked apart. And yet, some of his claims refused to disappear, because while his story sounded unbelievable, it also filled in the gaps, the sightings, the secrecy, the behavior of those objects in the sky. Suddenly, it all connected, and that's what made it dangerous. Because if Lazar was lying, why does his story still make sense? And if he wasn't, then the truth about Area 51 isn't just hidden. It's buried on purpose. At this point, you have 2 options. You either believe Bob Lazar or you don't. There's almost no middle ground because his story is too specific to ignore and too controversial to accept without question. The moment his interview aired, people started digging into his past, and what they found didn't make things clearer. It made them worse. Lazar claimed he studied at MIT and Caltech, two of the most prestigious scientific institutions in the world. But when journalists checked the records, nothing. No enrollment, no degrees, no trace. His supposed colleagues didn't remember him. His academic history seemed to vanish the moment you tried to verify it. Then came his employment claims. He said he worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory, one of the most important nuclear research facilities in the United States. Again, investigators looked. And again, no official records, no files, no confirmation. To skeptics, that was the end of the story. A man with no verifiable education, no confirmed employment, and claims about alien technology? Case closed. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because while official records didn't support his story, other evidence did. A Los Alamos phone directory from that time listed his name. Photographs surfaced, showing him at the facility. Colleagues, not all, but some, confirmed they had seen him there. So which version is true? Did he fabricate everything, or was something removed? Because if you wanted to discredit someone, you wouldn't argue with them. You'd erase them, make it impossible to prove anything, turn them into a contradiction. And Lazar's life became exactly that, a contradiction. Then there were his legal troubles. In 1990, he was arrested for involvement in a prostitution ring. Later, there were investigations involving illegal chemicals. To many, this sealed it. Not a scientist, not an insider, just a man with a story. But others saw it differently. Because discrediting someone doesn't always mean proving they're wrong. Sometimes, it just means making sure no one believes them. And through all of it, Lazar never changed his story. Not once. Same details, same explanations, same confidence. For decades. No major contradictions. No dramatic revisions. Just the same version. Repeated over and over again. And that consistency is what keeps the story alive. Because people lie. But maintaining the same complex lie for years, under pressure, under scrutiny, under attack, that's something else. And then there's the final piece, the one that still bothers people today. Lazar described test flights, specific days, specific times. He said the craft would be flown over the desert on Wednesday nights. So people went, they watched, and they saw something. Objects in the sky performing movements that didn't match any known aircraft. Exactly where he said they would be. Exactly when. Now maybe that was coincidence. Maybe it was misinterpretation. Or maybe he knew because he had been there. And if that's true, then everything changes. Because it means the story doesn't end with Lazar. It begins with him. And what he claimed to see might still be there. Hidden, silent, waiting beneath the surface. If what Lazar said is true, then the most important work at Area 51 isn't happening on the surface. It's happening underground, deep beneath the desert, hidden from satellites, hidden from aircraft, hidden from everything. There are facilities that don't officially exist, and according to Lazar, S4 was one of them. Built into the side of a mountain, completely concealed. No visible structures, no obvious entrances. From the outside, just rock. From the inside, something else entirely. He described hangars carved directly into the mountain, each one housing a different craft. Not prototypes, not damaged wreckage, intact, preserved, as if they were never meant to be here, but somehow ended up here anyway. And the way they were stored, not like machines, more like artifacts, carefully positioned, studied, protected, because no one there fully understood them. That's the part most people miss. If these craft were real, they weren't built by the scientists studying them. They were trying to reverse engineer something far beyond their own technology, trying to take it apart, trying to figure out how it worked, and failing. Lazar said the propulsion system alone defied everything modern physics understands. No combustion, no moving parts, no visible mechanism. Just a smooth, silent operation that bent gravity itself. Imagine standing in front of a machine and not even knowing where to begin. That's what he described. Teams working on isolated sections, each group given only a small piece of the puzzle. No one allowed to see the full picture, because if someone understood everything, they would know too much. Compartmentalization wasn't just security, it was control. And then there's the scale of it. If S4 existed, it wasn't small. You don't hide something like that unless it matters, unless what's inside it is worth more than any weapon, more than any information, more than anything. Because think about the implications. Technology that manipulates gravity, that distorts space, that doesn't rely on fuel, that could move instantly from one point to another. That's not just a military advantage, that's total dominance. Energy, transportation, warfare, exploration. Everything changes overnight. And yet, none of it has been revealed. No official breakthrough, no public announcement, no sudden leap in technology that matches those claims. Which leads to two possibilities. Either it's not real, or it's being kept hidden on purpose. Because releasing something like that wouldn't just change the world, it would destabilize it. Economies collapse, power structures shift, entire industries become obsolete, and the people who control that technology control everything. So, if something like that exists beneath Area 51, you wouldn't announce it. You'd bury it, protect it, deny it, at all costs. But there's one problem with secrets like that. They don't stay buried forever. Because the more people start asking questions, the harder it becomes to keep the answers hidden. And Area 51, it's been raising questions for decades. Questions that still don't have clear answers. Questions that don't go away. Because even if Lazar was wrong about some things, what if he was right about the most important part? That something is down there. Something real. Something we were never supposed to know about. And maybe something we still don't fully understand. By now, Area 51 had become more than a base. It became a symbol, a place where facts and fiction blurred so perfectly. No one could tell where one ended and the other began, and the more people talked about it, the stranger it got. Stories started spreading, not just about aircraft or hidden hangars, but about things that sounded far beyond even Lazar's claims. Secret meetings between governments and non-human entities, agreements, exchanges. Technology traded for something else. Then came the more extreme theories. Time manipulation, weather control, experiments that didn't just test machines, but reality itself. At first glance, it all sounds ridiculous. Too much. Too far. But that's exactly what makes it effective. Because when everything sounds insane, nothing gets taken seriously. And that creates the perfect cover. Because hidden among the wildest claims, there might be something real. Something buried deep enough to be dismissed along with everything else. And that's where the confusion begins. Because Area 51 isn't just surrounded by secrecy. It's surrounded by noise. Too many stories. Too many versions. Too many truths. And somewhere in that chaos, the actual truth disappears. Even experts can't agree. Some say it's all advanced military tech, decades ahead of anything publicly known. Others believe Lazar was telling the truth, or at least part of it. And some think the real secret isn't aliens or technology, but something else entirely. Something simpler. Control. Because controlling information is power. And Area 51 might be one of the greatest examples of that ever created. Think about it. For decades, the government denied its existence. Then, when it became impossible to deny, they confirmed just enough to satisfy curiosity. Yes, it exists. Yes, It was used for testing aircraft. Case closed. Except it wasn't. Because confirming part of the story doesn't mean revealing all of it. In fact, it can do the opposite. It can redirect attention, give people an answer that feels complete, while hiding everything that actually matters. And by the time people realize that, it's too late, because the narrative is already set. Area 51, just a testing site. Simple, clean, acceptable. But the details don't match that simplicity. The security, the restrictions, the decades of denial, the sightings, the testimonies, the inconsistencies. They don't fit neatly into one explanation. They never did. And that's what keeps the mystery alive. Because every time you think you understand it, something doesn't add up. And that's where things start to shift. Because maybe the question isn't, are there aliens at Area 51? Maybe the real question is, what are they hiding so carefully that even the truth sounds unbelievable? And if you follow that question far enough, you stop looking for answers on the surface. You start looking deeper. Because the biggest secrets aren't the ones people talk about. They're the ones hidden in plain sight, disguised, distorted, protected by disbelief itself. And Area 51 might be the perfect example of that. Because even now, with everything we know, we still don't know what's really there. In 2019, something unusual happened. Not inside Area 51, but outside it. A joke turned into a movement. It started with a simple post online. Storm Area 51, they can't stop all of us. At first, no one took it seriously. Just another internet meme. Just another viral idea that would disappear in a few days. But it didn't. Within 24 hours, over 1 million people signed up. Then 2 million. Then 3. Millions of people, all saying the same thing. What if we just go there and see for ourselves? Think about that. For decades, Area 51 had been untouchable. Surrounded by silence, protected by fear, hidden behind layers of secrecy. And suddenly, millions were ready to walk straight toward it. Of course, the military responded. Warnings were issued, clear, direct, and unmistakable. Do not approach, do not attempt entry. Use of force is authorized. That alone tells you everything you need to know, because you don't threaten that level of response unless something truly matters. When the day finally came, September 20th, 2019, the world was watching. News crews, cameras, live streams. Everyone expected something, a confrontation, a breakthrough, maybe even chaos. But what actually happened? Only about 150 people showed up at the gates, some in costumes, some laughing, some still serious. But when they saw the reality, the distance, the isolation, the armed presence, they stopped. No one crossed the line. No one tested what would happen next. Because in that moment, the joke ended. And reality took over. Area 51 remained exactly what it had always been. Untouchable. But the event did something else. Something more important. It proved how powerful the mystery had become. Because millions of people weren't just curious. They were convinced. Convinced that something was being hidden. Convinced that the official story wasn't enough. And that level of belief doesn't come from nothing. It builds over time. From unanswered questions. From strange details. From stories that refuse to disappear. And even now, years later, the mystery hasn't faded. If anything, it's grown. New satellite images, new testimonies, new theories, and always the same patterns: secrecy, silence, control. Because whatever Area 51 is, it's still active, still guarded, still hidden. And if it were just an old testing ground, why would that still be necessary? Why maintain this level of protection decades after the Cold War ended? Why keep people away so aggressively, even today? Unless there's still something there, something worth protecting, something that hasn't been revealed. Because secrets don't survive this long, unless they're still relevant. And Area 51? It's still one of the biggest secrets in the world. Not because of what we know, but because of what we don't. So here we are, after decades of secrecy, thousands of reports, endless theories, and still, no clear answer. Area 51 officially exists. That much is no longer a question. It was acknowledged, documented, and partially explained. But only partially, because what we've been given feels controlled, carefully selected information, released at the right time, just enough to close the conversation, but not enough to end it. Because if this was only about aircraft, why did it take nearly 60 years to admit it? Why deny something so ordinary for so long? That's the contradiction. And contradictions create doubt. You've seen the facts, you've seen the explanations, you've seen the stories. Now ask yourself this: which version feels complete? The official one, clean, logical, and limited? Or the alternative, chaotic, fragmented, but filled with details that refuse to disappear? Because the truth about Area 51 isn't just about what's inside the base. It's about how information is controlled, how narratives are built, how reality can be shaped without people even realizing it. Maybe there are no aliens. Maybe everything can be explained by advanced human technology. But even then, that raises another question. How far ahead is that technology? 10 years? 50 years? More? And if something truly revolutionary exists, who decides when or if the world gets to see it? Because history has shown one thing again and again. The most powerful discoveries are never revealed immediately. They're hidden, studied, used, and only released when it benefits those in control. So whether Area 51 holds alien technology or just the most advanced human inventions ever created, the result is the same. There are things we're not being told, things that exist but remain out of reach. And maybe that's the real secret. Not aliens, not spacecraft, but the gap between what we know and what we're allowed to know. So the next time you look up at the sky and see something you can't explain, ask yourself one simple question. Is it something unknown or something hidden? And more importantly, would you even be told the difference?